Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. My name is Rhonda Studnick Kaiser, and I am the Director of Customer Engagement for BigFix, and I'm going to be hosting our BigFix Decoded webinar today on BigFix Remote Control. We are recording today's webinar. If this presents you with any concerns, please drop it this time. You'll be able to access a recording of the event about an hour after we conclude. You'll just follow that same registration link that you used to get here, and you'll instead get a recording of the event. And just to note that if you have colleagues who would be interested in this content, you can also share your link with those colleagues, and they can just do a quick registration page, and then they'll get the recording of the event. So if they couldn't join us today, please do share that. We really encourage sharing of this content, and you'll probably see after we're done that you'll see this in other contexts like on LinkedIn and YouTube. So definitely become part of BigFix enthusiasts. Be sure to follow us on the forum. If you have questions about the content afterwards or want to review something, please do go ahead and follow that recording. Also, we do encourage you to ask questions throughout the course of the event today. Just add your questions to the chat box and we'll either answer you directly in the chat or we'll feed your questions to our presenters. And with that, let me introduce our talented group of presenters today. So with me, as always, in our BigFix Decoded sessions, we have John Talbert, who is our Director for BigFix Professional Services, and Joe Saylor doing his lovely snowboarding thing there with our BigFix Accelerated Value Program. We're also really thrilled today to have Antonio Secomandi, who is our BigFix Remote Control Development Lead, and Michael English, also part of our BigFix Accelerated Value Program. Excited to have you here. So as we said, today we're diving deep into the technical nitty-gritty of remote control. And we're going to look at remote control architecture. We're going to talk about some of the basics. And we're hoping that whether you are a pro with BigFix remote control or whether you're just getting started, you can see some of the benefits of what we offer. So let me quickly change presenters to Michael. And we'll talk a little bit about a use case that we have encountered here to maybe set the stage for what we are going to talk about today. So one use case that we've encountered is a very large religious organization with people all over the globe. They're in Africa, they're in the Caribbean, they're in Asia, places where maybe internet access is constrained and where maybe we have end users who are not quite so computer literate as those that we often encounter in our day-to-day work. So these users really present a unique use case for us. We're not just troubleshooting technical issues with a computer, which we often think of remote control as, oh, there's something broken, I want to fix it. In some cases, you can use and you want to use remote control to actually show people how to do something, to kind of do a tutorial, getting beyond those technical issues on the endpoint, but showing them how to use the capabilities that this particular organization offered to their people. So remote control really allowed them to work seamlessly with users no matter where they are, cut down on travel costs, having to have technical expertise in those varied places, but actually, having technical support wherever they needed it. So with that, I'm going to turn things over to Michael and Antonio, and take it away, guys.
So before you start that, I gotta say, I have to apologize to everyone here for this super high fidelity drawing. I'm gonna need you to redo this in MS Paint by hand.
Right.
Like we really need to improve it. Thanks.
Is it 8 or 16-bit? You can go either way.
Well, 8, of course, 8.
Oh, all right, we got it. Okay. So for some reason, I have to bring this window down, but hopefully this works. I'm gonna go to the next slide here. And before we talk about the different modes that we can use for remote control, let's get into the definition of the components of remote control that you might need to suit your requirements. You wouldn't need all of these, or you might need all of them. It depends again on the functionality that you require. The first one is going to be a target, and the target is a service-based application that runs on every machine that you want to remote control, and that's necessary across the board. The controller is anybody who wants to start a remote control session is going to need a controller. In each case, well, we'll get into that a little bit later. There's a remote control server. So we add a server to actually manage the connections in the sessions. Once you add a server, audit team will get better, a lot better. and the server controls the sessions. In a remote control server or managed mode, we'll get into that later again, you can add gateways, and gateways are used across secure network boundaries to work with firewalls to make it very secure connection from point A to point B. And we can add like only one IP address hitting out to the other gateway, one IP address. So it's very, very secure. And finally, a broker, and the broker service is actually used typically in a DMZ environment, and we can pretty much remote control anybody on the internet. It can be anywhere as long as they have a connection to the internet. So with
Awesome.
that, with that, we get into different modes that you can install. There's different configurations you can install based on your needs. The first one is the most basic one, and it's peer-to-peer mode. Peer-to-peer mode is exactly what it sounds like. It's just a peer-to-peer. It's a controller and a target. The controller initiates a session. The target actually controls the session and the policy or the remote control security policy of what functionality the controller can actually handle. In this scenario, you do have the ability to, on the BigFix console, you can set it up where you can right-click under computers and start a remote control session via the BigFix console. The next mode we're going to talk about is managed mode or peer managed mode, and that's adding a remote control server. And this adds a lot of functionality because now we have auditing. If you can look here, the controller actually uses the web interface to log into the remote control server. The remote control server negotiates the session, but when the session is started, it actually passes it off to the controller, and we have a TLS session directly from the controller to the target. So we're not delaying that session by going to the server and then back down to the target. You can also see that we are auditing. So we have an audit trail going up to the remote control server, and we audit everything. So anything that's done during a remote control session is captured in those audit logs.
So
security.
Go
ahead.
Sorry, go ahead. Yeah. So, this is already getting to be just a little bit complex, and I know that everybody with a remote employee is probably screaming inside right now that we haven't even gotten to internet connections. So, what's the secret sauce that allows us to make that happen?
Yeah. So when we get onto the internet, we add one component only, and that's a broker, and we call that broker mode. And we add the broker into the DMZ. And it looks a little bit complex on the right side here, but it really isn't. We add a broker to DMZ, we give it permissions. And over here, you can see we have different targets. This one has a target installed. This one has a target or no target. So we can literally remote control anybody on the internet as long as they use the connection URL. We have target unattended, and unattended means there doesn't have to be anybody behind the keyboard. If it's set up correctly and you can actually remote control anybody on the internet and connect through without anybody accepting the connection. And also we have the Light Web Portal, which allows BigFix controllers on the internet as well. So we can be on the internet controlling people on the internet with a target. With this model as well, we have security models defined inside the BigFix server. So you initially set up the configuration on the BigFix console, and then once it registers to the BigFix server takes over, and all the policies are handled through the remote control BigFix server.
So this all sounds extremely useful, but it also looks extremely scary to implement. You have a ton of lines here. I see the legend only indicates that we need HTTPS open, so that doesn't sound too horrible to implement from a network team perspective, right? You should have already taken your network team out to lunch many times at this point, and they should be your friends. You want them to be your friends, so that should make it pretty easy. The configuration looks like it might be scary though. Can you make me feel better about that? Like, is it easier than it looks?
It's way easier. Once you have this, well, you don't even need a server installed. Anything can be deployed via, oh, this is the wrong thing. Sorry, hold on a second. Anything can be deployed via a BigFix Fixlet or using the wizard. Here I am in the BigFix lifecycle domain. I'm going over to remote control configuration, deployment, and Windows. You can see that I can install brokers, gateways, targets via Fixlet. Very, very easy to push out. I can also go down here to the wizard and actually install the remote control server via wizard. Once my target is installed though on the endpoint, but that we push out via usually a policy, we can go to the remote control target wizard. This is where we set up the initial policy. So you can see here, we can hit Windows, Linux, or Mac OS, different configurations. I can set this up for server URL, so managed mode. We're using brokers, the broker certificates. You can see here, there's different policy configurations that we use. Unattended, so this is whenever they're on the broker and we want to actually hit that endpoint and without them accepting a connection on the internet. We can set that up. There's group labels, so we can set group labels here, and we can actually put these targets in certain groups and have that already laid out for us. So when we're setting up security configuration policies, the target groups are already set up, so it's going to make that a lot easier to configure.
So could you use something like that group to say, like, I only want to remote control like end user computing devices, but I don't want to remote control servers? Like, you could put that policy in place. And so by having those computers in that group with the right permissions, everything's configured, and so you're set. Or maybe you don't want to remote control like senior management, so they could be not part of a group, or they could be in a special group that only certain people could access, for example.
Yeah.
Is that the idea behind groups?
Yeah, the beauty of this and this new feature was when you put out a year or 2 years ago, is you can create a custom task in BigFix, and it's basically a registry key setting, and we can use relevance to put groups or targets into groups. So we can use anything. We can use LDAP paths, right? We can use whatever criteria you need to suit your group and put that over in a remote control server. The one caveat is you can't pull them out, but you can put them in. But it's very, very useful.
That's very cool. Yeah, I can see that there might be like concerns from, well, either end users or from management. You know, it's like, I don't want you, especially in that unattended mode, I don't want you to be able to have access to my machine in unattended mode. So you could put those policies in place.
And the policies are very granular too. You can get down, you can have certain features turned on and off. You can have certain times you can set that people can remote control. So you can get very granular with the policies.
That's awesome.
Yeah, port to listen. I want to go back here real quick, because I didn't mention this, but when you're on broker mode and you're in a client list or a target installed or unattended mode, they're not listening. There's no listening port for the agent or for the target. So that's very secure. So that's something that we should think about. Let's get back here again. And I want to show a demo real quick on using, let's say an endpoint doesn't have a target installed, and he's anywhere in the world, and I want to remote control him. I'm going to log in here to my remote control console. This is a remote control server. And I'm going to choose my machine that's out in wherever. Oh, I don't need to choose it actually. What I want to do here is start a broker session. So we go to targets, start a broker session. So you're going to see the controller is going to come up and give me two different options. It's going to be a connection code, and the connection code is used if the target is already installed on the endpoint, and I get this connection code off to them via email or text or however I want to do it, and a non-connectionless or non-target installed endpoint, and I give them this URL. So over on my target machine, which could be wherever in the world, as long as I have an internet connection, I want to type this in. I'm going to agree to the session here. It's going to download my BigFix temporarily target from remote control. Yes, I want this. And we're now in a remote control session. So if I go over to my controller here, you can see that I have all my tools available up here, as well as the session that I'm working with.
So that red bar at the top is telling the user, hey, remote control is started, right?
Correct. Yeah, and that's customizable as well.
Oh, nice.
So here's a good time to talk about some soft security stuff. When you just went through that demo, you clicked on a whole lot of things that are essentially security warnings, right? Like the user had to click, yes, I definitely want to do this. And this is like a really good just security hygiene thing to keep your users aware of the tools your help desk is going to use. So in this case, with BigFix Remote Control, you would want to send out new users, maybe even as like part of everybody's favorite yearly security training, just screenshots of what it's going to look like when a legitimate help desk operator wants to do something with your box.
Yeah.
You also probably want to have something that's like a trusted domain as your connection string. Obviously, Mike just has his IP address in here, but we would want it to be like hcl.com, something that is visually and easily verifiable as trusted for your users.
Yeah, good point. Very good point.
That connection string that you would be emailing to your users, then you're emailing them a link and saying, hey, click on the link I emailed to you, right? Could you instead of doing that, could you like post this link on a support site and like have it go to the support site and click the link and then put the code in, as opposed to sending the full link like an email? Could we make that work? Like, could you go back to the controller link when you started the session?
Yeah.
Yeah, but yes, it's very easy to do that, absolutely. Basically, all the interface that we have seen is the default interface which is offered by a broker sub-component named reverse proxy. But the customer could implement its own reverse proxy to handle all of this connect traffic.
Yes, so that connection URL, could you grab that and put it on your clipboard?
Yep.
Without the code, right? And let's take it back to the browser window, but drop everything after the equals, like get rid of the code part. Because if you put it in with the code, it autofills the code. But if you put it in with no code, is it going to give you like the option to type in your code right there? So that the kind of the help desk dialog would be the same place you open the ticket for me, go there, click this link. Now type this 8-digit number in, and I can tell you what the number is. Then you don't even have to email them, right?
Yeah. Yep. So we could strip that code out and make the URL just this.
Yeah, and does that work?
That works.
Boom.
And there's our connection code.
Yeah, I think that's I'd consider that to be a strong practice.
Yeah. Yep.
And all of this stuff isn't even like a theoretical security advantage. There's actually a threat group that's been active for a couple of years now, goes by the name of Black Basta, and their entire strategy, they only have a single strategy, and that is to find users on LinkedIn, someone with a high value account, bury them in spam emails, just absolutely sign them up for everything on the planet, and then contact them by impersonating a help desk to get them to run either like Windows remote desktop or some other remote desktop tool, and just essentially trick them into allowing them to connect with this kind of remote control technology. And then of course they immediately install some ransomware applications, and things go south real fast from there, and they have been wildly successful. So training your users to click on a specific thing for remote control tools and not training them to just click on anything that anybody sends them is in your security best interest in like the real world.
Yeah, amazing. We lost your share, Michael. I don't know.
Oh, I turned it off on purpose.
That's okay. I just wanted to be sure.
Are we back on?
Yes.
I don't know what
we see your PowerPoint, not in slideshow mode.
We do have it's not a question, but it's a comment I'd like to read, just some feedback. It was pretty quick for us to create 1,200 target groups and then use the power of BigFix relevance and BigFix to auto-associate devices to the desired groups in a programmatic BES action. Awesome. They had to do that because of their specific complicated use case. But yeah, you can use the full power of BigFix in setting up and controlling all these, targets that you want to have, and even, pushing down specific policies for specific targets.
Right. I mean, you can even like create target groups based on policy function, right? One target group is going to be a connection code. once no connection code, or accept connection, don't accept connection. So you get, once we had that feature and use that feature, you can really get into managing, putting people into the right groups very, very easily. Where before we're using like a tool to use either computer name or IP subnet range to put them into targets. This using relevance is way more powerful than that. So that's a very good use case.
So I think we've kind of covered the security piece of this. What other things do we want to show off here? Because I heard from a little bird that there's some new features that just recently got released that maybe we want to highlight to some of our more familiar remote control users that are on the call today.
Okay, so we just recently released the last update of remote control, actually 6 days ago, which includes a brand new session mode. You're referring to this portion of?
Yeah, I'd love to see that. I think a lot of people would be very interested in the session mode. Let me make you a presenter, Antonio. One moment.
Okay.
All right. I know people that especially, well, not especially, but a lot of folks who maybe are in Linux systems, they're going to find this pretty awesome.
Yeah, indeed. Because basically these new features allows us to take control of the remote target through a simulated command shell. I'm going to show this in a minute if I understand how to share my screen.
It's always the trick, right?
Mm.
Okay, I think I have it.
Let's see.
Mike,
Yep, here we go.
Never mind.
So are you seeing the screen with the console, with the BigFix console?
No, we're seeing the directory, the remote control directory and services.
Okay. Are you seeing the login page of remote control target list?
Process Explorer, services.
No, that's the wrong screen, sorry.
That's all right.
That's okay, no worries.
That's the
This
one.
should be it. Okay. So this is the remote control interface, and first thing we want to show you is these policy things that Michael was referring to. When you install the new version of the product, these policies which controls the possible execution of the session mode are disabled by default and with the default value of no. So if I go to my existing policies, which are based on group user and target groups, I can see that those that relates to the common feature are disabled. Okay, those are the policies that we were referring before. So through this policy in the server, we define which session mode are possible. For instance, we now want to enable common mode, and we want to allow a couple file transfer and active perhaps, and disable the others. That's definable by the policy. And we also want to enable the auditing of the commands that were executed, just to show the new feature. And generally speaking, this is where you control the auditing of the session. So you can define whether to audit all of the records, to audit those on the server, or to audit that on the local machine. So you control auditing. You control the security. Now, for the purpose of this demo, I have disabled here all the user acceptance at the target level. So here you have control to what happens when the user tries to take control of a target, whether there is required a user in front of the target to accept the connection or not, and what happens if there is no acceptance within a certain period of time. So basically, the security model of remote control when operating through the server is based on these user groups and target groups, the relations between them through these policies. Okay, we have changed this, and so now we can save those policies.
And Tony, one of the things that I really appreciate about what we've got here is the depth and granularity of controls that we can put on this stuff. I think that's a real standout thing.
Yeah,
and
it's
having a
indeed
UI to
very
just control it all
powerful.
directly.
Yeah, it's indeed very powerful. So you have a group of targets, and you can define the policies depending on the users taking control of these targets, or vice versa. So certain users will always have more powerful possibilities than others, or a certain group of targets. You definitely want to make sure that only certain people under certain circumstances would be able to take control.
Hold
So
on a
how do
second
we?
on that. So you're saying that I can, on one target, say that, hey, if the controller is in a certain controller group, they'll have different privileges on that target than a person in a different controller group. So I can control both sides in sort of a matrix.
Yep.
That's
Yes.
pretty neat. I like that.
And how do we engage with that system? Like what authentication methods do we use to define like what user is responsible for what box?
Okay, so basically you define user groups, and the very basic entry level is that you define your user groups manually, but most probably you will have an active directory that already contains your representation of your organization in terms of user groups. And so you can populate our users registry through LDAP protocol. And that's configurable here through this interface, which is now not configured, but you can basically import users and users group into the product. And one other layer of authentication on top of that is we do support single sign-on, and we can support any identity provider as long as the identity provider supports the SAML2 protocol. So in this regards, we are pretty we offer a pretty secure access methodology to
Yeah, I
the
appreciate
interface.
anything that allows you to reuse existing secure authentication methods. Thanks.
Yes, and this single sign-on is becoming more and more popular, as we are seeing on the usage of the product. Yes. So let me go back to the menu. So let me select one of the targets, and we do start session. And we now have this new command session mode, which we have enabled before. It was not available before, so it's now available. So let me start. This is the kickstart of the controller portion. And by the way, in this release, we've added the possibility through a setting in one of our properties file, the common.properties, to delete this trc.ws file once the session is completed to prevent peeling up of this. So this is how the interface looks like. Now we are basically connected with the target, and we can perform command through that machine. It's a command session mode. We can start session mode, go back and forward as needed. And in this mode, we support basically two modes of operation. This command interface does support two modes of operation. One is the single command mode, and one is the shell mode, which I will now show you both. It is possible to load and execute predefined command sets. So let me try this one to show that in this mode, this mode is executing a single command, one at a time, and there is no persistent status on the target on what we perform. So if I now recall command number 0, I set a variable and I can see the variable. But if I now try to see the value of this variable again, this variable will not be there. So it's a single command mode. What's interesting in this single command mode is that you can create predefined set of command to execute in a sort of automation of this interface. So let me show one of these command files, for instance. Those are basically XML file, which defines which command you want to execute on the remote target, basically based on the platform. And I'm simulating here a little bit a diagnosis of an application which is running on the target. In this case, I'm diagnosing, let's say, a controller, which is one of our components. So basically, I can load and run a broker checklist and execute this automatically.
Cool.
So I can get a flavor of the health status of this. Now, in this case, what I've done was to check the version of the installed component, whether the process was running, sneaking into the configuration to see which ports, which interface are enabled, and which port are we listening at, whether the service is running, and whether this service is listening on the correct port. And we check a little bit the log files, perhaps. So this gives you a health status condition of whatever application I'm dealing with.
So I can't help but notice that at the very top of this output box here, you're connected to a Windows box. And this is all, we were just running commands directly from a command line on a Windows box that may have a user logged in. Do they have any idea that you're doing this and gathering data on their box right now?
It depends on the policy that we have set up before. So basically, you can set things up to indicate that the user has to accept the fact that someone is doing anything on the machine. Or you can set up the things as we said. The only real notation that you will have that someone is using the system while in command mode is this remote control icon turning red, which says there is a session in progress.
Yeah.
So we can
that's
let
in the
users
system
know.
tray. Yeah.
So we can let users know a support person is doing something to their box, but they're not necessarily interrupted. So there's, like, I see a lot of value here because a lot of the times, we have to wait for users to respond to like support requests to just gather data to fix their stuff that we could fix automatically if we could just get information off their box without interrupting them. So this seems like a big time saver.
Yeah, Joe, I'm reminded of talking to the support desk and, okay, now click on this and, type ipconfig into the box and what does it say, right? Those type of dialogues just chew up so much time. Just being able to run this like as a predefined, it's almost like running a script and having them, okay, I know what the problem is and jump right to the problem, almost like management. So the help desk use case here, I think, is really enhanced.
Yeah.
Could you use this to gather and download? This happens all the time in our BigFix world. Give me this log file, give me that log file, send me this gather state, give me this or whatever. Could we use this even to diagnose things for like BigFix help tickets? I'm just that was something that occurred to me. It was like, man, if I could go grab that logs off of whatever endpoint I needed for like diagnosing an issue would be great.
Yeah. Antonio, can you like tail the BES client log with this?
Oh yeah, so you can tailor anything.
That's awesome.
It becomes application dependent at that point where the logs are and things like that. You can always switch to file transfer mode at that point and grab the log if you want.
True. Yeah. But not tail it. That's awesome. Yeah.
Wow, that's awesome.
And now we have this other mode just to mention. So we said this is a single command mode, and what you do is like this. But you can go in shell mode basically. So at this point we are connected to a remote shell on the target machine, and we can execute commands, and there is persistence. So if I reload again the command that we were executing at the beginning, not the shell, simple thing here. So I can now recall the command pressing ESC and the number. I can set an environment variable, and then I can print it. And it's there. I can change directory. I can go whatever, and it's persistent.
Very cool.
And again, here I can load a predefined set of commands that are applicable to that specific application or whatever. So you can start, stop, and change. Let me just show you one more thing. Let me just check a certificate here to show one last piece. So we can interact with the command interface remotely. And when dealing with password, we can use this button here to hide
cool. Yeah,
password. So
very cool.
you can check the certificate and things like that. And we can leave the command mode. This is basically a very high level overview of the possibility.
Yeah, but it's a great feature.
And which of the BigFix, well, like which of the remote control components do you have to have in place for this stuff to work? Like you need to have a target? Do you need to have a controller? What pieces do you need?
Well, at the bare minimum, you need the server, target, and the controller. And then if you want to open this, to use this feature across the boundary of your corporate network, then you need the broker. So
So it is dependent on the server to get this level of control over your endpoints. You do have to have the server, like the peer-to-peer mode. We don't have this.
Right, the peer-to-peer mode does not have this. And the on-demand feature that has shown, Michael has shown earlier, that doesn't have the command mode feature as well, as we thought that since you are already interacting with the desktop of the user, there is no real need to do that.
I don't see any questions from the audience at the moment. We should probably talk for a couple more minutes while we.
There is one last thing that I wanted to show you very quickly. So when you finish the session, certain point, since we have asked by the policy to register everything that has happened during this session mode, we can go and check the session history.
Yeah.
And where we can see the session that was established during the demo. So this will tell, this is part of the auditing that we were mentioning before when using the server. That's why Michael said this, but it's much more complete when using the server. So it says which computer was addressed, which user, when was started, the policies that were in effect during the session. Those are the auditing records that we were referring before. So the auditing record for the controller will say certain things. The auditing record from the target will say other things. And as we said, to save the command history for the execution, you will have basically here a complete recording of whatever we have done during this command session mode.
Nice.
And
this makes the hyper paranoid security guy in me just very happy to see.
Agree. Yeah.
So speaking of security, you know, we've shown a lot of power here. There is just so many things you can do with remote control. What are some of the back-end reasons that make it better than RDP or maybe some of the other solutions on the market, just from a, you know, a baseline security perspective?
Well, from a security perspective, what we can say is that all the communications between the different remote control components are basically ciphered. So the traffic is ciphered. We support TLS 1.2 and TLS 1.3. And when talking about TLS 1.2, we limit only the more secure cipher suites. So it's not the complete TLS 1.2 cipher suite, which contains some weak ciphers. We only limit the use of secure cipher suites. And once you have the component all of a certain level, which will be at least 10.1, you can configure the product to run in TLS 1.3 mode only to make that more secure. So that's about the traffic and the encryption of the data. One other layer of security comes from the fact that the product adopts certificates and certificate stores when each component is talking to each other. So basically we ensure that each component is talking to the intended counterparts. So there is a security layer based on certificates. And as Michael has said earlier, you can configure the targets in such a way that they initiate the session through that connection code, as we were seeing before. And in that circumstances, the targets on the remote control target on the machine is not listening on any port. So there is no open port against this service to be subject to intrusion attempts or things like that.
Yeah, and open listening
That's
ports is a
another
really
interesting
important thing to have shut down. We've seen in the security space like a many-fold increase in the amount of ports being scanned just over the last several years. There's just been well-known actors scanning many ports all the time, and so keeping those ports closed cuts off that avenue of attack.
Yeah.
All right. So while Joe, I'm gonna let you kick this off, but last call for questions from our audience. We're gonna kind of wrap things up here pretty quick. So if you have any questions, throw them out there.
We could mention also the feature set compared to RDP that we have in
Sure.
the target as well.
Yeah, I mean, we've talked a bit about security here. So what's as a user doing kind of a standard remote control session, what's some cool stuff that we have, Mike?
Let me, can I get share
Yes.
privileges again? Yeah.
I will give you presenter rights. There you go.
Presenter rights. I don't know what we're looking at right now. Let's see.
I see all targets.
Oops. Okay. So let's start a session here with my endpoint. I'm going to start an active session. Again, it's going to download the, oh, can't do that. Permissions. Okay.
We can make it so secure we can't even do it ourselves.
Right. Right. But here's a broker session. So if I have a broker code, right, I'm going to copy the broker code. This is an endpoint with the target installed. The target user is going to come over here, and we're going to ignore this. This is for something else. Go to my target over here. I'm going to right click it, and I'm going to enter a connection code. Right there. I'll paste it in there. And I'm going to connect. And connection's established. So I'll go back to my controller. And you can see our feature set here, right? We have mouse clicks, right? We can turn number functions on, perform an action. This is kind of cool. I can inject control delete, a highlight tool, which I can highlight certain things on the screen. Enable privacy. So if I enable privacy on the target side of things, their desktop is obfuscated. You can't see anything. But something cool. I mean, you can't do this on a RDP. I could draw, right? I can literally draw anything.
I'm voting for stick figure.
What?
I'm voting for stick figure. If you're drawing something.
All right, we're gonna do it.
We definitely went straight for sad potato instead here.
Sad potato. Where am I? Here I am.
Well, Mike, where are you out of?
Idaho.
So, I
don't
think that he'd draw anything else.
We'll draw Mr. Potato Head.
Okay, we've got the, it looks like maybe oh, there we go.
Mr. Potato Head. We love you. Okay. And over here we get the full artwork.
So that's pretty cool.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. Yep. Copyright too.
Can you show me the highlighting? That one looked like interesting. If I'm thinking about, working with somebody who I'm trying to teach or trying to do a thing with, like, what does it look like?
For highlighting, I'm just gonna do this. It's like almost like a highlighting, like a yellow highlighter, right? So I go back over to the remote control section. It's very cool. And then we have this other feature here. I think this is where we have it. Maybe it's in the tools. Tools is cool too. Quick capture. I can get system info. That's kind of cool. I think it's going to ask over here for permissions for this. No. There's my system info of the target machine. So we got a lot of good info here, right? Services running, network domain, virtual memory, free memory, pretty awesome. The highlight tool. Oh, not highlight tool. What am I looking for?
It's fine. We understand all of your brain power was consumed by drawing Mr. Potato Head, so that was my bad.
Right? Yeah, I'm all locked up now. I can't, yeah, all right, forget it. Anyway, there's a tool here that you can right click and lay little flags down, like number 1, do this. Number 2, right click here. Number 3, type this. And that's a really cool feature.
That's very cool.
Yeah.
All right. Any last items we want to bring to the table before we wrap up today?
Question tool is clear.
All right. Well, thank you all very much for joining us today, and thank you, Antonio and Michael, for bringing this really compelling conversation to the table. Really excited for people to get out there and use this feature. You know, I think not everybody uses it, but it's so powerful. I hope that we maybe get some converts, and if you need help, you know where to come. Talk to your technical advisor, talk to one of us. We'll be happy to point you in the right direction. Thank you all so much. Have a great rest of your day, and we'll see you on the next webinar.
And see you guys.